Live from the Great Plateau, it's the SOGOpod.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the SOGOpod. I know it's been a long time coming, but we are back on that old recording horse. We got a lot to talk about today, including JonTron's controversy. What? We got a lot of Zelda talk to go on. I haven't played it yet myself. Frank has. And we'll also be picking on the Wii U, their issues, their problems, and a couple other things here and there on the docket. We got a little jumping around to do.
Yeah. So let's start out
Frank,
with Zelda.
Frank, you want to bring us? Yeah.
Let's start out with Zelda. Let's not give them, the whole sandwich right away. You gotta eat your sides. Can't have your pudding if you don't eat your meat, kind of thing.
You can't have the whole pudding.
Not the whole pudding. So let me talk about Zelda. Let me tell you about Zelda. Zelda is the greatest game ever made. Period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
So it's not another Skyward Sword then?
No. This is I don't know what the fuck they did.
A bunch of weed, like.
Yeah, I don't know. They just decided to make the most out there Zelda game ever, but it's also like the most like the original like NES Zelda.
Yeah.
Like.
So it's basically Metal Gear Zelda at this point. It seems like they took a lot of cues from Metal Gear Solid 5 as far as their exploration and shit you can do goes.
Yeah, definitely.
A little extras.
It has that that Japanese open world game vibe going on to it.
Yeah.
That Monster Hunter, Metal Gear Solid 5, like where it's just like they know how to make, they know how Westerners make open world games, so they do that, but then they also are like really open up all the possibilities and all the systems that they can, just like, well, guess what? Everything's going to have physics on it and stuff can roll down hills. And, that's why we had to make two different kinds of bombs. There's a bomb and there's a square bomb, so it doesn't roll down a hill, like instead of just making it where the bombs don't roll down hills.
Yeah. There's no bomb bowling this time around?
Yeah, your bomb just does whatever the fuck it wants to do, and then you can detonate it whenever, and it's part of these runes. And that's really the whole crux of the game is this Sheikah slate. So it's their Ocarina or Wind Waker this time around is the Sheikah slate that allows you to interact with the world in different ways. There's two different bomb runes. Like I said, there's a round bomb and there's a cube bomb that can sort of sit wherever you need it to. And there's magnetism, which will allow you to pick up and move metal objects, obviously, from big old metal boxes all the way down to whatever weapon or shield you might have if it's made out of metal, Then you have a stasis, which will allow you to freeze an object, and then you can hit that object with like your weapon and basically put a kinetic charge on it so that it goes in the direction that you were hitting it with that weapon, and you can build it up more and more and more until it releases, either by running out of time or by, you can release it yourself. And
so they really did take a lot of cues from Metal Gear. I mean, they put the Zendatsu system in there from Rising.
Basically, yeah.
They have like C4 basically from Metal Gear. They have the open world feel of Metal Gear Solid 5. I mean, this is
horses.
Punished Link.
There's a D-horse, but it's not a D-horse. It's just there's fucking horses everywhere. And
This is straight up just Punished Link.
Yeah. And I mean, fucking the best moment for me in the game was I was trying to travel across this big old plain, and I was getting tired. There were no horses around, but there were a bunch of deer. And so I ran up on the deer going to kill them because I needed food, and then I ended up running close enough to them to where they, gave me the mount icon. Like, it gave me the mount context button, and I was like, what the fuck? So I hit it, and I jumped on the back of this fucking deer, and I started riding it around like you would a horse. And then apparently you can do that with also with the moose and the bears as well.
You can ride a bear.
You can ride a bear. You can't stable them. You can't go take them to the stable and say, hey, let me put this bear in here with all these horses. They won't let you do that, but they will. But you can ride around for as long as you want to until you either kill. Like one time the same deer, the first time I was riding deer, I was riding around and I got attacked by these, they're sort of like ninjas that will attack you every once in a while from this evil cult that's against your resurrection, I guess. This like sort of pro-Ganon cult, basically. And they attacked me, and so I jumped off of the deer into the air to do a slam attack with this big-ass club that I had, and it ended up killing the deer that I was riding, but not the dude that I didn't even hit him. I just landed right back on top of the deer and killed him in like one hit, and he exploded into, a meat bone thing. Like, I'm just
That's kind of gory for Zelda.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, like, everything, has the same little colorful explosion that you would expect from, a Zelda game, but you really start to get into the nitty-gritty of it, and you're like, oh, God, I'm doing terrible things. Like, you're hunting, obviously, because, like, there's no, like, random hearts floating around in the world, like, in vases and in grass and shit like that. You have to cook food. You have to kill animals and cook food at these cooking pots. And, it has a lot of the same open world tropes you'd expect from a Ubisoft game kind of thing, where, it's stuff like, stuff like tower, climbing towers and stuff like that, and random things spread out around the world, but when you climb the tower in like a Ubisoft game, like a Far Cry or Assassin's Creed, it just populates that section of the map with like everything there is to do there. There's like 6 or 7 different like activities, from like racing to hunting to all these other things, and this one Zelda doesn't do that. It just reveals the topography of the map. So know, like, where all the mountains are at and where all the valleys are at and shit like that. But it doesn't show you, like, hey, there's a shrine here. You got to go find those things, To
me, it seems like that's, like, most of that is the incentive to go exploring, which is a good thing, something we haven't seen in a while.
Yeah, and I finally got the map filled up. I finally climbed my last tower, and so I have my full map. And they do something weird. I don't know, like, what magic or mysticism they're working here behind the scenes, but the world feels like small and big at the same time. So like you're standing on top of a tower, and in the distance you can see Death Mountain, and it's fucking erupting, and there's a black cloud all around it, and then you can look to the other side and you can see the desert. You can see Gerudo Desert, and you can see back at the Great Plateau where you started at, you could see the Temple of Time and all that shit. And then you just start moving in one general direction, and it's like you feel like you're fucking right next to Mount Doom all of a sudden, or Death Mountain rather. And it's like, fucking hell. Like, I just walked, and I'm here, and it didn't feel like it took that long, but then you think back on it and you're like, well, I just did like, 20 different things on my way here, and it's been 2 hours, but I felt like I just got here, like I was doing that, and I was like right up on the mountain. I was like, shit, for the longest part of this game, I've been staring at the distance saying I'm going to have to get there sooner or later. Yeah. And then there it is right there. I'm in the shadow of it, and it's just they I don't know how they're doing it or like what their way, but it's just, and it for a fucking game that I'm playing it on the Wii U, and this is not this was never great hardware to begin with, and now it's definitely not even the top of the line Nintendo hardware, but it's still got this amazing, like, I don't know, draw distances and weather effects and individually rendered blades of grass and shit like that, and particle effect and all these things. You're like, how the fuck are they getting this out of this system? Like, this is amazing. And yeah, there's frame rate drops and shit like that, but they're nowhere near as bad as like it doesn't feel like
Blighttown on fucking Xbox.
Yeah. And it doesn't feel like it's doing like you know when the frame rate drops are coming. You're like, okay, well, I'm gonna be walking into a place filled with bad guys, and they're all gonna be jumping up and fighting, and maybe something is gonna catch on fire. It might also be storming and lightning at the same time, so that's going to be causing, and it's doing all this shit at the same time. It's still like, it dropped down like 5 frames. Like, it's still pretty fucking amazing when you think of all the shit that's going on behind the scenes that this shit is happening in.
Well, that is the benefit of having closed-sourced hardware and developing exclusively for it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been Nintendo's whole thing, and one reason they're able to get so much out of their systems is because they are so tightly knit with everything.
Yeah.
Pardon me. So I've been hearing about I think it's called the Blood Moon system.
Oh, yeah.
So what actually is that? I know it repopulates enemies every now and then. I guess that's part of how they keep the world big but small, is it's very well populated, lots to do, but not necessarily repetitive.
Well, I mean, I did run in, I mean, I've been through a bunch of blood moons, because they happen, because the moon goes on a cycle, and every time it's a full moon, essentially, it's blood moon time. So you can look at the moon every night and say, okay, well, it's a waning crescent right now, so I got a bit, and then you look at it again, and it's like, okay, now it's about to be a full moon, so it's time to... So it does work on a cycle, so you can time it out and know when it's going to happen, but also it gives you like a good hour and a half lead up to like when it actually happens to when you know it's about to happen, because you can see the moon rising off in the horizon. You're like, oh fuck, there it is.
I read an article. I read an article. There was a guy that was on the final boss, and somehow it was a glitch apparently, but he got a blood moon as soon as he finished off the last boss, and the last boss got resurrected. Yeah,
that's the kind of shit that will happen. I mean, the game is like, again, like I said, it's a bunch of systems on top of each other, and they didn't ever really think to play test out all the ways in which those can help or hurt you. They just said, well, we'll let the players have fun and see what happens. Like when they added in the lightning system, for instance, they said, okay, well, it's attracted to metal. Okay, that's all we know. How are we going to make it where the player can, not be attracted to metal? No, not really. Yeah, so if you have a metal thing on your back, you're going to get struck by lightning. Metal shield, metal bow, metal sword, or on the flip side of that, the enemies, if they're holding a metal sword, they'll get fucking struck by lightning. I just had one where I was working my way backwards to this thing because I had to go take it from one place to another, and I had to follow these sort of torches. It's like you have to get the fire from one place to another, but you need to like sort of light these torches on your way there, because when the fire dies out on whatever you're holding, you'll have to go back and get it, basically. So it's better to light each one on your way. So I was working my way back following these lanterns, I guess, till I got back to where I needed to go. And on the way there, I ran into a moblin, and it was during a thunderstorm. So the moblins, they're these big, giant fucking guys with like a single unicorn-style horn. It looked like a horse unicorn kind of thing, kind of mixture.
Yeah.
And and he was just standing there, and he was holding like a metal sword, and you could see it start sparking. So I stepped back. It just let the lightning strike him, and it pretty much almost killed him right away. And then I just ran in with a fucking with a metal sword and hit him a couple of times, and then I unequipped it so I wouldn't get struck by lightning. But you could then you could pick up a metal sword and you could throw it in the middle of a group of dudes, and the lightning will be attracted to it, and it'll get struck by lightning. And so you do shit like that. It's super cool. Like the way the systems, the way they interact with each other. Again, like I said, it's the thing that makes it the most innovative Zelda game ever, because there's nothing like holding you back like there has been in previous Zelda games.
Yeah.
There's like, it's literally after you get past the first bit and the world opens up to you, do whatever the fuck you want. You want to rush right to the fucking boss and try to fight him? Go ahead. There's nothing stopping you. You'll probably die, but there's nothing stopping you. If you want to only do maybe like 2 or 3 of the, sort of things leading up to it, fine, nothing's stopping you. Like if you want to just put all your effort into finding the Master Sword as quickly as possible, go ahead. There's nothing, there's no one's holding your hand through this entire game. Like, literally, your first quest that you get is destroy Ganon. Like, there's no lead up to it. It's just destroy Ganon. It doesn't tell you what to do, you got to do to destroy Ganon. It's just like, that's just your first quest. Get it done. And it's not like your only quest. It's not like the first thing you do, but it's the first thing that pops up. And then they'll tell you about all the little different things as you're going, and like, it does a good job of mapping familiar Zelda archetypes onto an open world. So like there is, a big open desert area. There is a Lost Woods. There is a Death Mountain. There is sort of a marshy wildlands. There's a jungle, and it's all in this world, and it feels, again, like I said, it feels so fucking big. It feels like you go to the fucking desert, and the desert's big enough to be its own fucking Zelda game.
Yeah.
Like there's enough shit in that world to do a one fucking whole game in, and now that's just a little piece, and then you move to the next piece, and it's just like, holy fuck, like, I don't know. It's amazing that they are able to make this game, and only thing that I have to say even slightly negative about it is that I don't know if they can do it again. Like, this game's amazing.
Can lightning strike twice?
Well, it's like,
I mean,
the problem is...
See, what we'll have here, what we'll have next is we'll have 10 more years of Zeldas being compared to Breath of the Wild.
Well,
until we have the next Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, it's going to be that Ocarina of Time problem. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. It's like, are they found their formulas, now every game is going to be some twist on the Breath of the Wild formula, or is Breath of the Wild, like, that's the real question, is Breath of the Wild a weird offshoot of the Zelda formula, or is it the future of the Zelda formula? Because, when Ocarina of Time came out, there's probably people thinking, like, is this just a weird offshoot of the Zelda formula, and Zelda is still Link to the Past? Like, is that kind of the way Zelda goes here?
Yeah.
And when people say, oh, they changed things up in Link Between Worlds, they did, but the basic core concepts of Zelda were still there. Like, none of those core concepts are here. This game does not feel like a Zelda game at all. If it wasn't called The Legend of Zelda and didn't have the same, like, characters and style to it, it could be anything, Yeah. Like, there's nothing really tying it to Zelda. Like, you could call the Cuckoos chickens and nobody would have thought differently. Link could have just been some dude and nobody would have really had a problem. It would have just been like, oh, this is some weird sort of fantastical version of Skyrim that some indie developer made or something.
Yeah.
Like,
it's one of those fundamental changes in an established game formula that only comes around like once every decade or so, it seems.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the game or the game of that genre that shapes the future of that genre. Just like Ocarina of Time was, just like Link to the Past was. Zelda's always been one of those defining games. Then you have things like, Metroid Prime and first-person shooters start off with GoldenEye. There is that defining game in each genre. And I think this is going to be the defining game for the future of open world.
But then the question comes down to, like, is this game like the end-all, be-all of open world experiences on the whole, or is it just like another step in that direction. Like, because like a lot of games are big open world games nowadays. You know, like you have Horizon Zero Dawn and and GTA obviously, and you got Red Dead 2 coming out, and you have all the Ubisoft properties like Far Cry and Assassin's Creed and all these things, and this year alone you already have Horizon Zero Dawn coming out at the same time as Zelda. You still have the looming shadow of Red Dead 2 this year. You know, is this like... Because, like, in a way, I feel like it moves the genre so far forward that if you're not allowing this level of interactivity in your world, like this level of, like, physics-based weirdness that this game can get up to, like, being able to, like, stasis a log and whack it enough times and then jump on top of that log and fly across the world like you're fucking General Giro from Dragon Ball, you know, like flying it across the...
You mean Mercenary Tao?
Mercenary Tao, yeah. Like if you're a fucking Mercenary Tao flying this log across Hyrule, you can fucking do that, by the way. You know, it's not just like... The game lets you do it, and the game lets you do so many fucking things that like a Zelda game would normally be like, nope, can't do that. You know, you thought that was going to help you. And there's so many, like there's these shrines, there's little mini puzzles essentially all around the world that you use to level up essentially, you use to get more hearts and get more stamina and stuff like that. And they're made so that, you know, you have to complete them in a certain way, and there's also normally like 1 to 2 chests in each shrine, so there's special high level equipment in there that can help you, you know, get through the game a little bit faster, you know, because everything breaks too. That's the other thing. So, you know, people complain about it, but at the same time, it works for me because it's like, well, yeah, but after a while, you're not running into fucking traveler swords and soldier swords anymore. You know, they don't throw those at you after you've hit a certain point. You know, like the game knows where the higher level areas are.
And here's the thing about Nintendo too. I mean, nobody experiments like Nintendo, and they have their fair share of failures, especially when it comes to consoles. But something they always seem to get right is implementing new concepts. And it seems like even with Metal Gear, like all the stuff that they implemented, it was just kind of a lot of it was there. You could do a lot of stuff in Metal Gear Solid 5, and it was really awesome and really cool. But a lot of it was just kind of pointless and there just to be there. Whereas it sounds like a lot of what's in Zelda is, this is a mechanic, this is usable, this is something that you can do in this game because you fucking want to, or it's necessary to, or you find a real way to use this. I mean, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of useless just garbage in there that's not story related or simply for entertainment purposes, you know.
Yeah. And a lot of the story is told through cutscenes with voice acting, which is weird enough. Like
that is strange. But Link doesn't talk, right?
Yeah, Link doesn't talk.
Of course,
but all the other characters do, but not all the time. You know, there still is the text conversations that you would have in a normal Zelda game, and then every once in a while you'll get a cutscene, usually through these sort of memories that you're trying to recall, because, you know, in every other Zelda game, you can name your character whatever you want. It's just the canonical name of the character is Link, but people will call you Frank or Josh or whatever name you want it to be. This one, he is Link. You are always Link, and that's your name, and you're a Link from 100 years ago who got put into a coma and was woke up 9 years later.
This is straight up fucking Metal Gear Solid.
No, he woke up 100 years later, though, and he's basically...
I'm afraid it's been 100 years.
Basically, like... And they just sort of throw you to the world with no memory of what anything is, but everyone kind of knows who you are, and there are still some people alive that remember you from 100 years ago, because, you know, some of the characters live really long times, like the Zora, they're obviously long-lived fish people, so they know who you are, and they remember you from 100 years ago, and they're like, how the heck are you still a young kid, you know? Like, but there's, you know, and it's not really too spoilery. I mean, a lot of people were sort of walking around the concept, but it's not that much of a spoiler. There are traditional Zelda dungeons in this game, but they're split up into these divine beasts.
Yeah.
So there's basically these 4 giant robots that have dungeons inside of them. So there's like this weird Shadow of the Colossus-y kind of fun to that, you know, too. Not to mention with the climbing. There's a lot of Shadow of the Colossus in this game, too, which is probably the reason why I like it so much. Considering Shadow of the Colossus is like one of my favorite games of all time. So it's like basically take Shadow of the Colossus, make the world more alive, and then put a Zelda pastiche over everything. Boom, you got one of the greatest games ever made, in my opinion. Like, it's not...
So yeah, Zelda, 10 out of 10, hype is fucking real.
Yeah. I mean,
essentially.
if you have the ability to play it, if you have a Wii U, buy the Wii U version. If you have the money, buy the Switch version. Get the game and play it, because you will not be disappointed. I don't think... I have not really found much negative criticism of the game, so I don't know, like, what people are really saying about the game that they don't like. I mean, there's people obviously criticizing inventory management and stuff like that, but that stuff, like, to me, it's a sum of its parts, you know, and you can't judge a game by the sum of its parts. It's or by the parts, you have to judge it by the sum of the parts, because it's not about the little niggling bits, like being annoyed by the inventory system. Yeah, who fucking cares? Like, it's the least of your problems.
Yeah, and I think the next step that we're going to end up seeing, unfortunately, but it always happens, is we're going to see someone else, another developer, take this game, remake it, add a bunch more shit to it, thinking, oh, we've got more to do in this game. You can do more things. There's more items. There's more of this. There's more of that. Put more shit in it, and then fucking ruin it.
Well, so
that's where the genre is going to head.
Do anything that a Far Cry hasn't done before, that an Assassin's Creed hasn't done before, that Metal Gear Solid 5 didn't do before. But it does it in a way that is much more, like, it feels like you're discovering it for the first time. Those other games, they just shove it in your face because they're like, look, we made 60 hours worth of content. You're going to fucking get every goddamn second out of it. God damn it. Because we want, you know, we worked hard and we want you to see every little thing, from racing a fucking car to climbing a tree. Like, you're going to do everything. This game doesn't tell you how to do anything until after you've done it.
Yeah.
Like, that's how the game
like
literally...
some weird form...
tutorializes
It's like a weird
stuff.
form of viral marketing, because they know that people lurk all these forums. They're on Reddit, they're on 4chan, they're in they're everywhere. They're on Facebook, whatever. And there's so much hype surrounding this game. People find new things, and they're like, "I didn't know you could do that." And this continues for weeks because no one told them.
Exactly.
So
There's
they
nobody
have to tell somebody
to
about
do
it.
these things. There's nobody telling you that this is what you're going to get when you do this and this. Like, you know, nobody told me going into it that I was able to ride deer. But being able to realize, oh shit, I'm riding this fucking deer, like, and then just wanting to be like, well, what else can I fucking ride? And like trying to find other things to ride. And you can ride some of the enemies, because there's one enemy who is like a centaur, so you can jump on his back and start hitting him in the back of the head. Now you can't like soothe him to the point where you can ride him around, but you can jump on and whack the shit out of the back of his head. And like, there's one video, and because I didn't know more shit you didn't know you could do. There was one video on the internet, it was on Twitter, it was a dude like reflected back these guardians, these sort of weird robots that are sort of all around the world. You saw them in the E3 trailer. This one was chasing after him, and he turned around and did sort of a parry, because there's like a parry move with the shield, right when the blast was shot, and he parried the blast back into the robot, and it killed it like instantly. And obviously it like starts off with that "I am the one who don't need a gun," that song, like like, and started like playing it up like it was a fucking World Star video or something. It was fucking great. And I'm just like, holy fuck, you can reflect back the blast. And I thought you might need like a mirror shield or something. No, any fucking shield will do. And so that's
this is Dark Souls style now.
Yeah. So that's what I started doing every time I encountered them, was reflecting back the blasts, because they're hard as fuck to beat. Now that I have the Master Sword, they're a little bit easier. But even the Master Sword has durability to it. So you can't just run around with the Master Sword beating shit up. It will break and it will recharge in 10 minutes, but you can't just use it all the time. You need to use it when something that is infected by Ganon's calamity. That's when you have to use that's when you can use it without fear of it breaking. So you can use it to fight Guardians, and you can use it to fight. Obviously, I'm assuming fight Ganon. Whenever I get to that point, I'm still doing shit like. I have one more Divine Beast left. I'm refusing to do that one because I can't even figure out how the fuck I get to it, because I get near the volcano and I catch on fire. So, not to mention,
don't spoil it yourself.
Yeah.
Like, just kind of go through it and figure it out. It'll be more of a reward.
Exactly, and so that's what I'm trying to do, is just figure out different ways to get to where I think the Gorons live. I don't know, because like I assume that's. I mean, they always live on Death Mountain, so like. Yeah. Where do they? But how did they? Obviously, they can survive the fire. I can't freaking survive the fire. So now I gotta figure out if there's like an armor or something I can use to. Because I know I can take food. So here's one of the fucked up things you can do. You can take food, and you can go to like a frozen area, and you can put the food on the ground, and the food will freeze. And now you have frozen food, and you can eat that frozen food, and it will cool your body down, so when you go to a hot area, you don't have to worry about putting on, like, the Gerudo outfit, because that's the only outfit that has, like, heat resistance to it, is the dressing up like a woman, which I thought was hilarious.
I've seen a lot of memes about that.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Like, it's really funny too, because like it's played for laughs, obviously, because the Japanese love cross-dressing gags, and so it's played for laughs when you first do it. Like, the dude gives you he's dressed as a woman, he's acting as a woman, but then the wind blows and he reveals that he has like a beard and he's a dude, and Link's all like, kind of like, just basically gets played for laughs. But then you get the outfit, and so it's just like, well, I gotta pretend like I'm a chick and to get into this place, but when you're inside, you can buy more outfits. Like, you can hey, if you enjoy dressing as a woman, there's more outfits for you to buy if you just want to. It's like, oh, that's nice. Like, if that's what you're into, I don't know. But
something for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And they do a good job with, like, and then, of course, the arm. The only thing that disappoints me, now I do know you can get it through the game, so there's nothing in this game that's locked behind the amiibos completely. Everything that the amiibos can give you, you can get in the game, but it takes a lot longer. So the amiibos can give you, like, a tunic for, Ocarina Link, a tunic for Twilight Link, a tunic for Wind Waker Link, hats for all of them. It could give you the original sword from the first game, like the It's Dangerous to Go Alone sword. Like all these things. You can get those things in the game through other means, but the way the game does it, I don't. But the amiibos are the main way to do it. So that's the one that disappoints me slightly, is that Link does not run around in a green tunic and a green hat, doing all that shit. Like, you can dye stuff, so you can go to this dude's place in this one town, and you can dye outfits. So if you wanted to, you could always buy the same outfit 3 times, and it had 3 different colors of it. So, like, I just dyed the Hylian tunic that you get, like, sort of like basically your second set of clothes after your first little main one, and you buy it at this shop in Kakariko Village, and you can go dye it, and I dyed it green, and it looks pretty much like the green tunic from the Zelda games. And then and it comes with and there's also a hood, so I did that, and I dyed that one green, and so you look like fucking Zelda. You look like Link, rather. You look like you're in a Zelda game. You don't look like this kid in a blue shirt.
Yeah. I wonder if they like started developing this game, got like halfway through it, and were like, you know what? Fuck a new IP. Let's do Zelda.
Yeah, like they were developing something else, and it was like, well, you know, this would be a great Zelda game, right? Like it could have been anything. It could have been anything.
Yeah.
Like I said before, like there's only like the Zelda brands are attached to it. The Zelda IP is attached to it in like the characters and stuff like that. But it could have literally been made by anybody, and nobody would have been like, man, this game feels like Zelda, because it doesn't.
Yeah. We're approaching the halfway mark in the show. Let's take a little bit of a break, and when we come back, let's talk about the JonTron controversy. We'll be right back. Saga! Welcome back, everybody. If you haven't heard already, JonTron is in some hot water. Yeah. He's in a bit of hot water over some allegedly racist comments about immigration, among other things. Frank, you want to weigh in on this first?
Yeah, well, first of all, I wouldn't go easy on him and say allegedly racist. He was spouting, like, David Duke level white nationalist viewpoints. Now, this is weird coming from a dude who is literally not white. He's of Iranian descent, right? Like, he's Persian. He's not white, so it's weird. He's culturally white, I guess. You know, you could say like he's was raised up in the whitest of white culture, which is video games. So he has sort of like adopted the pastiche of whiteness. If you want to get, I mean, white supremacists would reject this guy soundly if he was hanging out with them. Like, he couldn't join the KKK, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But that's all beside the point. The point really is that this guy is saying these things, and I will give him the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, if you want to know exactly what he said, you can go find out. It's not that difficult. He'll even tell you himself on his YouTube video. But my main problem with it is it goes back to, I don't know why I needed to know that. Like, I don't know what benefit it gives me as the viewer of his content to know what his political beliefs about immigration and race are. It doesn't benefit me at all. It doesn't benefit him, because there's really no way he could say those things without it being some level of a shitstorm. You know?
Yeah.
Like, no one's ever going to hear things like that said and be like, oh, man, he's got a point. I didn't believe it when David Duke said it, but now that JonTron said it, well, it just really opens my eyes. Like, it's, nobody's going to do that. That's just not how it works. So I don't know why he felt the need to just even say anything about it, I get that everybody gets sort of fed up and they want to vocalize that kind of thing, but and this goes for liberal celebrities too, like, I don't fucking care what you think about politics. You are an actor, you are a YouTuber. Your YouTube is about dumb jokes about video games. Can keep making dumb jokes about video games and stay out of politics. Same with the celebrities. Just keep acting in the superhero movies and stop telling me what you think about Donald Trump.
I swear this all comes back to fucking MK Ultra and like the government trying to shut down people that get too popular.
Oh,
shit.
God, I don't know.
Because
it just seemed
happens.
Like they all
every one of them.
Yeah, and I don't know if it just comes back to like, I think it is this desire that they see their influence grow and they know that their voice is respected in some way. So they are like, well, I'm going to voice my opinion about this thing. And then they get called on it, and it's basically up to them to be like, okay, well, let me back up, reassess, and come back at this with a more level head and maybe with a little bit more research into whatever it is I'm talking about. Or they double down on it, which is what JonTron did. And he goes full, like, oh, well, yeah, I'll take my completely researched and completely illogical reasonings onto a 2-hour-long debate with somebody and try to vocalize it in a unscripted, unsupervised format. That sounds like a brilliant idea.
Yeah, that was the worst thing he could possibly have done there.
Exactly, but he doubled down on it. He was like, well, fuck you, I know what I'm talking about. It's like, no, apparently you don't. I'm not saying the other guy's any better. The motherfucker was out there just after that talking about how animators and artists don't work and that their work isn't that hard and anyone can do it and that, shit like that. Does that fucking
first of all, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Fuck him hard. I know what goes into animating and shit. Fuck that guy hard.
Yeah. So it's just like, oh yeah, it's posting pictures of like dudes coming out of the coal mine being like, oh, after a long day of sitting behind the animator table, and it's like it's not, okay, it's not fucking back-breaking labor, but you don't fucking think it's hard, do it if it's so easy.
Yeah, do some skilled labor, then come talk to me.
Right.
But
sorry, it can't be as easy as, I don't know if he was even saying like my job is harder, like fucking playing video games for a living is harder, or if he was saying like my job is also not hard. I don't know what his stance on that was, but either way, nobody gets the right to say who is having a harder. I would not fucking want to be one of these people that has to work for a game site and review video games for a living. That sounds like a fucking nightmare 90% of the time.
I would kind of like to do it.
It wouldn't be. It would be fine, but like, it's also hard. I don't think that there isn't. I don't think, maybe streaming is easy for somebody to make a living off of, but I don't think it's even easy to make a living off of. It's just something that they're doing and they get some form of value out of it, but they're not fucking swimming in cash. Yeah. And you just had that story not too long ago about the dude dying after trying like a 24-hour stream and shit. We almost do a 48-hour one. We had to stop a little short, but goddamn. We took naps in between. Imagine trying to do it the whole way through.
And it's like the thing that just recently happened with PewDiePie. The motherfucker was he was headed up by Disney. He was backed by them. He has YouTube Red shit.
Yeah.
The man is the most subscribed to person on all of YouTube.
Yeah.
And he fucks it up with some I don't know exactly what he said, but apparently it was anti-Semitic.
Well, he had, it is like literally the definition of anti-Semitic, at least in what was done. It was, he paid these guys on this website called Fiverr. So if I step back, obviously, I'm going to say, this point of this video was not to be anti-Semitic. The point of this video was for him to say, hey, look at this website that lets you pay people to do dumb shit.
Yeah.
And so he was like, I'm going to pay these 2 Indian guys to hold up a sign that says, death to all Jews. And I want to see if they'll do it for $5. Yeah. And so that's what he did. And so he was like, well, obviously, the video wasn't me trying to be anti-Semitic. The video was me trying to make these guys do shit for money, which I'm just still kind of like, that doesn't make it better. Like, I could post a video about me making a homeless guy really dance for money, but that's not going to make me look like I'm in a positive light. I
think all that really does for me, though, as far as PewDiePie is concerned, is reinforce the idea I had in my head that he's just not funny.
No, he's not. That's really all it is.
That's not comedic. That's not even clever.
Yeah, and that's really the main problem a lot of people had. If you step back and because you have to run into circles that I kind of follow on like Twitter and stuff like that, and you sort of work your way down. Like you start off following reactionary sort of Gamergate types, and then you start following the more what you would call SJW types, and then you go even further down behind that, where they're like, actually, identity politics is dumb, and let's start talking about class, and like, so then it's like basically taking a step back. So like, the SJWs are all like, oh, he's an anti-Semite talking about death to Jews. This guy's fucking terrible. Also, at the same time, support Israel.
Yeah.
There's that level, and then there's the other level, which is just like, it doesn't fucking matter if he was just trying to make a bad joke. It's a bad joke. That's one. But also, why the fuck are we letting this rich dude who makes millions of fucking dollars, he was like $14 million, make a video about him making poor people dance for money, essentially? Why is that even allowed to be entertaining? You know,
he was being an asshole there. That's
there's a way to do that. There's a way to do that, but look at this weird ass website that lets you pay people for money without also being like, they're not poor enough to do this.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean,
it turns out they are.
If Filthy Frank were to do something like this, he would A, do it better.
Yeah.
And B, it would work because, someone like Filthy Frank knows how to make something like that have the shock value, but then make you be in your head, oh, that's wrong. I'm going to hell for laughing at this.
Right, yeah.
Whereas with the whole PewDiePie thing, it's just like, wow, you're just a dick.
Even if you don't want to double down on it and say, oh, he's an anti-Semite Nazi, which I don't want to do, and I don't and the people who do, that's the complete wrong take to have on this whole thing.
Yeah, I don't genuinely believe that he's an anti-Semite. He may actually, I don't fucking know. I do believe he's an asshole.
He's from a European country that literally had nothing to do with the war, one way or the other. So, his country might have a different perspective on the whole Holocaust thing and Nazis in general. They didn't take a side. They were neutral, historically speaking.
But going back to JonTron, though, it was fucking dumb. Yeah, a lot of his viewpoints are fucking just dumb, fucked up, unresearched, just completely wrong.
Just out there. It is. His arguments were the most base level. I'm not a white supremacist. I'm a race realist. That kind of stuff. That level of oh, you're what happens when he's the intelligent design to Christianity's creationism. Where they basically said, okay, we're not getting anywhere with this creationism thing, so let's wrap it all up in this pseudoscientific way so that it can be more appropriate to the mainstream. That's the same thing that white supremacists did. They took these ideas that they've always had about white superiority and ethno-superiority and ethno-states and things like that, and they wrapped them up in pseudoscience so that they would make them easier for the mainstream to swallow. This was documented as having happened. There was a great New York Times piece about one of the kids who was sort of brought up into this world, and was sort of the leading figure in this movement to mainstream, for mainstream acceptance of white supremacist language and stuff like that. And this is the stuff he's talking about is the same thing. So it's it's easy to be if you transferred this over to intelligent design and creationism or something like that, if you ran into a person who believed that there's a possibility that some sort of cosmic being created everything that we know, and that's intelligent design, and there is a sort of design to everything that seems like some level of intelligence was behind it, you could have a reasonable conversation with that person, because you're okay, I see where you're coming from. And that's the same language that he's using here is okay, I can see where you're coming from about immigration and compatible races and things like that. But I don't know. It's just, I got way off on a
think
tangent
I think the thing that really happened though was, if you're a white person, you have to go one of several ways in politics, or at least racial politics.
Yeah.
You're either a white apologist, and you're going full SJW. You don't care, like a lot of them do. You're straight up white. You go the white supremacist route and just go full on fucking white power kind of thing. Like black power except for white.
Yeah.
Or you form your own arguments but are not a white apologist.
It's trying to avoid like universally trouncing white identity, because it is a thing. You know, I'm not saying that white identity doesn't exist, which is a sort of SJW kind of liberal way of thinking that, oh, well, you know, you're just white. Like, there's nothing to you. You're the default character kind of thing. It's because you want to avoid that, because all it really does is people who want to have the same level of pride in their life and their history that black people have, that Mexican and Latino people have, that, you know, in their history, that you want to have that same pride about being white, but you also don't want to be like viewed as a racist because you're proud of being a white person.
And what happens a lot of the time, especially when you're not that in the politics, when you're a white person, is that you see all these SJW types, and you know all these apologists, and you get built up with this like, no, I'm not a racist. But I want to defend myself. I don't know
therefore,
how. And you get back
I don't believe this, therefore I'm a racist kind of thinking. Yeah.
And
that is there's the same problem. What happens a lot of time is these people will get backed into a corner and they'll spout off a bunch of shit that they hear fucking from the internet, like JonTron did. Yeah.
And they don't word it in a way that makes sense. They haven't formed their own arguments yet. JonTron's at like level 5 of finding his own political state.
Yeah. He's very much a reactionary. He's very much in that same vein as anyone who's on the internet, 15 years old, just got like really deep into like video games or politics, that kind of thing, the things that come along with them, and everything is about identity. Everything is identity politics in a way, you know. Everything comes back to like either you identify as a gamer and what comes along with that, and then you run in those circles, and there's also like a lot of weird sort of white supremacist underlying tone in even game culture, you know, like shit like that with like Gamergate and stuff like that. And there's this weird sort of misogyny that runs undercurrent to all that as well. And it's just like you pick up on those things just by being around them. Like if you spend too much time on 4chan, it's not that weird to think that you became a crazy Nazi, you know, like.
Because, I mean, it is true. I mean, as much time as I spent on 4chan, I actually had to kind of break away from that a lot of the time, because some of my thinking was just like, this is fucking
You're getting
dumb.
Poisoned by it. Yeah. Because
and you have to recognize that.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
There's a point before you recognize that you're being poisoned by the culture. You can't take the culture of a board like Pole into real life, and people
it doesn't
forget
work.
that.
Yeah, it's incompatible. It's incompatible with real life. It's incompatible with logical thinking. It's incompatible with, and that's the same thing with being like a hardline identity politics, uber alles, you know, like very much only about social justice. There's nothing else matters except
it's on both ends of the
justice.
spectrum.
And there's that is poisonous as well, because then you do end up running into a problem where you're like, well, you know what would have made this movie better is if Iron Man was trans. Like, that doesn't make any sense. It has no basis in the fiction, but now I have this negative opinion of this thing because it didn't have the thing that I wanted, even though it was completely unrealistic.
Yeah, it didn't cater to my specific weird niche beliefs.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know,
there's
you
a
start
way to
this
approach those things. Like that's what the people need to learn, the difference between whitewashing and adaptation. You know, like if you're adapting like something like Iron Fist, you know, you're going to make the character white because the character's always been white. If there was an Asian Iron Fist, if Iron Fist was Asian and you cast a white guy to play him, that's whitewashing. Now, if you took the character who's always been white, put him in this thing, and then now he's still white, you can't call whitewashing. He's not an Asian guy. Yeah, it has some of that dumb white savior stuff that always happens in these old media but it's an adaptation of something that was made in the goddamn 60s. What do you expect? They did it well with Doctor Strange, the ancient one, who was a generic Fu Manchu Asian dude in the comic books was played by Tilda Swinton as an old Celtic woman. You know, like they just changed the metaphor behind it. You know, it's still, he's no longer this white savior because it's not about being white. You know, like it's just about he's a fucking sorcerer supreme. Fuck you. You know, like, and so. Yeah. I mean, but this movie was
getting off the actual politics talk, and back to actual JonTron, because we're not a politics podcast.
Yeah, well, it's all stuff is just wrapped in it, like.
Yeah, I know, and there is a time and a place to talk about it, but we got to try to not be that podcast. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, it's easy for us to do it because we're on we're like. On the same level, if you look at the political compass, we're on the same level of the authoritarian libertarian scale. Like we're on the same line there, but we're on other ends of the left and right kind of scale.
Yeah, we do have that weird Hannity and Combs thing.
So yeah, we're both very much like about freedom, personal freedms, and all this other stuff. But then how our methods of going about them are different.
Yeah. Should government do it, or should we let the free market do it?
I don't know.
Nobody knows.
Let's not answer that question, or even try.
Next time on SOGOpod.
But JonTron,
things break down.
And I think the backlash too. A lot of this comes with there is a undercurrent in everything nowadays to be reactionary towards everything. It's this outrage culture. A lot of people do talk about it as like it's a the right wing will point at SJW types and liberals and say they're the ones who always outrage over everything. They're freaking out. They cause a stir every time something happens. But you're the motherfuckers who are going to Starbucks and buying drinks and making the people write Trump pence on them like that's doing something. Like both sides are full of outrage and outrage culture, and both sides love calling people out. And they love to call out culture. And I think that's really the biggest problem, is to step back and be like, look, he's not going to be affected by you calling him out. If anything, it's galvanizing him. He's going to be like, look, This is what, because it's like it is like Star Wars, in that basically it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're going to basically say, well, guess what? You're going to do this, and they're going to say that you're wrong, that you're evil, that you're racist, that you hate everyone that isn't white, and you're a white supremacist and all these things. And they're going to say those things if you say this. And he says them, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
So he gets galvanized in it, in that way of thinking. He gets basically like, well, yeah, guess what? Fucking Emperor Palpatine was right. The Jedi are evil. They're not letting,
And don't get me wrong, JonTron should have stayed out of politics altogether. He shouldn't have said any of this crap because he's a video game guy. He should have stuck to making
dumb jokes about video games. And if you go back to the PewDiePie thing, PewDiePie's thing hasn't been video games for so long.
Yeah.
That it's like, it doesn't even matter that he's not, I can't say stay out of videos. I can just say, don't try to be funny, because you're not funny. You're not a funny person. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, just because people were entertained by you screaming at video games, I'm entertained by a lot of people screaming at video games. It doesn't have to be PewDiePie. That's a huge genre on YouTube that doesn't have to be him. And when he's trying to say, I'm just a bad comedian trying to learn how to be a good comedian, okay, well, go fucking do some open mic nights. Don't fucking make videos on the internet, especially not on a major corporation's dime. That's the thing that really a lot of people need to realize, that these are fucking major corporations. They can do whatever the fuck they want with these people. Like, they have no reason to keep PewDiePie around. And if he does something that they don't like, they can fire him. That's how it works,
Yeah.
Same with JonTron. He can get removed from Ukulele because the people who made the game don't agree with what he said. It has nothing to do with his rights to say those things, because they don't fucking matter at a certain point.
Right. And I think, as much as I hate it, as much as I really would love him to be in Ukulele, because I love JonTron still, that you're completely right. They have every right to do that. That is their game. That is their property. There is nothing stopping them from dropping him from the game. And they probably made the right call because of all the crap that's coming out with JonTron.
I mean, it doesn't even matter. Like, even if he had come out there and, like...
What I'm saying is, though, yeah, JonTron had some fucked up views, but this call-out culture that you were talking about, there's no reason to put a fucking jihad on the guy. Yeah. I mean, he's still a great content creator. He still makes some amazing content. He's very good at what he does properly. And if this were 10, 15 years ago, people would have been like, shut the fuck up and, make your stuff. People would have the good sense, I would think, that this would be it'd still be a thing. It would still be a little bit of a backlash.
Well, everybody is.
I think it would die down.
Like, I think everybody's still very sore after, an election that featured two of literally the worst possible candidates in the history of presidential elections. I said two, by the way. I didn't say just one. Hillary's fucking awful too. All of you.
Oh God, yes. Clinton and as
supporters.
Much as I rooted for Gary Johnson, he wasn't too great either.
No, I mean, especially if you look at the third party candidates. You had Crunchy Mom and like your weed smoking dad. Like,
I mean, Emperor Supreme 2020.
Yeah, like just two of the worst presidential candidates ever.
Did I say Emperor Supreme? Vermin Supreme.
And they. And they literally built their entire, literally the entire campaign was two sides of the political spectrum. Both of them had very ravenous support from a base that would attack anyone and everyone who had something negative to say about their candidate. And then you had the other side of the, for instance, on Hillary's side, you had people who were like, look, I don't like Hillary, but I'm going to vote for her because she's not Donald Trump. That's the kind of camp I fell into. And then you also had the people on the right who were like, look, I don't like Donald Trump. I can't stand the guy, but he's a Republican, and I don't want another Democrat in office because we had 8 years of it with Obama. And they're not going out there and attacking people, but guess what? The crazy alt-right people are out there attacking people. The crazy Clinton supporters are out there attacking people. Left and right for no goddamn reason. And so it really creates this, it just galvanized all this hatred of that other side. Basically galvanized, the hatred of any kind of dumb conflict on the internet. So, immediately everybody jumps on any little thing. And especially after you had a president that got to the position that he was in, even though he was saying the craziest, dumbest shit possible, who still somehow got to the fucking presidency with an known, crazy... I mean, I won't go so far to call Steve Bannon, a white supremacist, but I will call him, a far-right, reactionary, possible fascist. I will go that far. Even with all that stuff, all this information out there, people were still like, well, we gotta... He's the best man for the job. So it's basically just people are just look, I'm fucking tired of being told that my opinion is invalid about a thing, so I'm going to double down and triple down when somebody disagrees with me, and that's what it is with JonTron. It's a bunch of people who only maybe minorly disagree with him, but are just look, I'm going to fucking shut this guy down the moment he fucking starts talking. He has no room to focus, there's no platform for Nazis, shit like that.
Yeah.
And I very much agree if you're talking about actual Nazis. And they're not that difficult to identify. They're pretty good about calling themselves Nazis, it turns out. JonTron's just a misguided guy, He's just a dude who spends too much time on the internet and, doesn't... And he probably also has a hard time getting laid, and that's another part of it too.
Like I said earlier, I think it was a lot of that white guy getting back into a corner because of this PC culture we have, and that reactionary.
Let me let these dogs out real fast. Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm back.
And I mean, when I say PC culture, I mean things like what's going on in Sweden right now, where people are literally hiding their faces to express an opinion. I recently read an article about what's going on over there, their big immigration thing with Muslims and all that.
Yeah.
And the state is literally blocking new statistics from being made on crime, on Muslim crime, because of the immigration stuff, because of this PC culture.
Yeah.
And one of the people that was interviewed for this article was a psychologist. Mm. I mean, this is his job to analyze people's minds. And he literally had to hide his face and obscure his name for the interview because he was afraid of losing his job for doing his actual job.
Yeah.
For breaking this down, down this PC culture.
The West has had, like, the Europe has had that problem for a long time. And like, I'm not going to actively defend, like, that line of, even though I'm a very liberal person, I'm not going to actively defend that style of protecting, like, if it doesn't, like, if a person has like ill intent, it's like that is when you know that there's a problem, like that's been a problem in Europe for a very long time. I'm not saying that there's a massive amount of unreported crime or whatever, but they've told you multiple times that this is what they're going to do. ISIS has said, we will infiltrate these countries through refugees, and you might be talking about, like, now if you back up even further than that, for me, I just look at it like this. America's a big fucking country. I don't think ISIS is going to be marching down Main Street LaGrange, and I don't think that they're going to even be marching down fucking New York. Like, it's a big country. There's a lot of fucking people here, and we have a weird way of sort of, like, brainwashing people into patriotism and loving this country after you move here in a weird way, even though it's fucking terrible sometimes. Like, we have a weird way of doing that. But in Europe, it's not so much the case because there is a lot of, like, well, that's just them, like that kind of thing. And so, they do have this sort of mentality that, like, because I don't see it, I don't really have a problem with there being a Mexican radio station, because, one, that's a corporation deciding to put that station out there. It's not like the Mexicans made them do it. It just so happens that there's a lot of them and they want to listen to the radio, like, I look at it like that. It's a decision by a corporation to make money. There's no problem with that. If a Mexican wants to wave a Mexican flag outside their house, that's fine. Like, I don't care. It doesn't create incompatibility, and I don't have a problem with there being a Spanish language on a fucking package. It doesn't affect me whatsoever. I can still go about my life. Now, people wonder about the slippery slope and the broken window theory, and they're like, oh, well, you let them do that, then everything's going to go downhill. And that's kind of what JonTron was talking about. Yeah. It was like incompatible cultures. He's basically saying, like, hey, you can't have them here because they don't want to be compatible with the American culture, which read white culture. They want to be they want to do their own thing, and that's what the problem is. And I do think, there's a certain level of PC culture to it, but like I said before, I'm so far beyond identity politics and social justice stuff because it's not the end all be all. You cannot fix racism without also fixing a billion other problems. And those billion other problems are not going to be fixed by calling people out. And that goes for both sides too. Like, you're not going to fix the problem of Muslims immigrating to a country with ill will towards that country by breeding hatred within the people who already live there. Like, that's just going to create problems where now people who are innocent and have no ill will and want to live in that country are now being targeted by groups that don't want them there at all. And that's creates a whole other
I think
issue.
It all boils down to differentiating what is an actual racist thing and what is an honest to God discussion about race. And that was that was one of the things JonTron said in a response video about all this, which might have been a bad move, might have been a decent one. I don't know.
Probably not a good move to put it on his main YouTube channel. Because
it
literally
draws more
the
attention
last
to the
video
controversy.
he uploaded was this fucking response to this thing that most of the people, if you just look at his YouTube, would have no idea. Well, he
did mention
shit. You know,
he did mention one thing though that caught my ear, and that was we say we want to have an honest discussion about race, and then you get mad when we try to have an honest discussion about race, and even though he went about it the complete wrong way, and that doesn't really apply to him, that does apply to the rest of the country, I believe. Yeah. And I think that maybe his head was in one place, but his mouth was in another.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a way to look at what he said as, like, he's misguided. You know, like, he has this idea in his head about what he thinks and what he feels about race and all these other things, but it doesn't come out the right way, or his way of researching it was flawed to begin with, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's like every white nationalist ever brings up the Irish racism thing. Yeah. Because the Irish were treated like absolute garbage. Right. Everybody knows this. And it kind of sucks. I mean, it kind of does suck that that's not an argument that you can use against in a racial debate. It should be, but it's just not. And I think everybody but him knew that.
The best course of action when you're debating race is to be like, well, you don't have it so bad. Look at the Irish hundreds of years ago that literally don't have anything happening to them at all nowadays. Like, nobody gives it. Like, the Irish dominate the police force in Boston. You know, like, there is no systemic institutionalized racism towards Irish people. You know, there was, but guess what? After a while, you're white, and you get to just be white. You know,
and I think they go about it the wrong way too, because there are still some things that affect certain people more than others. Yeah,
and it all comes back to class, in my opinion. That's really the whole thing.
Yeah, like, it's certainly class based.
That's people talk about the white working class, and there's definitely were a huge amount of liberals out there who were like, "Fuck the white working class. They don't matter." After the election, when it was kind of determined that they were the reason why Trump won. But then a lot of the people that I was following and podcasts I listened to were like, you can't say that, because they also voted for Obama for 2 terms. They were the same people that voted for Obama, voted for Trump for the same reasons, because they thought he was going to make things better. You know, and you cannot discredit that. You cannot make this whole thing about race. Trump still had more Latino people vote for him than Hillary did. You know, and this is a guy who was saying bad hombres and get rid of the illegal immigrants. Because you know who hates illegal immigrants more than racist white people? It's fucking actual immigrants who came here legally and went through all the shit that you have to go through to come here legally. You know,
right? And another thing about like racial debate today. I mean, you're right. We do have to get to a class-based debate rather than a racial debate, because I'm Irish Romanian. The two most trashed fucking peoples on the planet.
Gypsies and fucking dirty potato eating.
Yeah, my ancestors' past is just absolutely fucked. Like, we were just fucked up. But you know how much that affects me? Fucking none. Right. And when you have people bringing up like slavery, you know how much that affects you today?
It doesn't affect them.
You know how
today,
much classes affect you today? A lot.
But that's the thing, though. That's the problem, is that we haven't even moved past race when it comes to Black Americans. So, like, we've moved past race with Irish. We've moved past race with Romanians and you know, in this country. Like, but we haven't moved past race with Black people. Like, we're still in race for some reason. Like, it took 100 years before we got rid of slavery. And then after slavery, it took another 100 years before we got rid of segregation and Jim Crow laws and things like that. And now we're just living in the 50 years of post-segregation, post-Jim Crow, where, well, now it's the police force's job. And this is shit that fucking Rage Against the Machine was talking about in Killing in the Name of. So this shit's been going back for a long time.
Yeah.
That basically that politicians were using the police force as their private army to, and there's so many other goddamn things when you dig down deep into like fucking history, like the fucking Tuskegee experiments and shit like that, like all these weird ass things where it's just these targeted attacks on black people throughout time. We still haven't fucking moved past it. And then now it's all coming back down to like fucking dumbass culture wars that don't matter because fucking black culture is one of the most dominant cultures in this country. Like rap is everywhere, and guess what? The most popular, most highest selling rapper in the world is a white guy. Like that's how messed up this country is, and that like a guy like, and I think Redman said it. He was like, I think that he meant well by it, but he's, it's true that if a black guy had the talent of Eminem, he would not be as popular as Eminem. Because Eminem got popular because he's a white dude. And his talent obviously is great, but it's not compatible with just that mainstream sort of white culture. But now we're moving even beyond that. Like black culture has become so mainstream. So many black memes are just things that people know now, like fam and lit and all these other things like World Star, like all that shit. But then but the same people that will post a fucking fight video will also be like, well, stars and bars, South shall rise again. Like, and they're listening to fucking Jay-Z in their truck, like their pickup truck with the fucking, it's like, I don't think these people care. That's the other part of it, too.
Yeah.
Like, they don't care. They give so little shit about identity politics that if you try to call them out on their whatever problematicness, it's like, they don't fucking care. That's not their fucking world. You could call out another SJW liberal for being problematic. You can't call out a fucking right-winger for being problematic because they don't even know what the fuck it means. I was just trying to be funny. Like, that's what their response is. Like, oh, I can't make a joke anymore? Like, because then you guys fucking sit down and be like, well, here's why it's not a joke, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, fuck you. That's why it doesn't matter. If we were to fix the problems with class in this country over race, then those problems would go away. But instead, we're more and more worried about dividing and dividing and dividing and dividing. And guess what? Those white working class people want to be on the winning side when the dividing like ends. Whenever we're done separating everybody out, they want to be on the side that wins, and if that means being on the racist side, that's what they're going to do. Because they just want to be on the side that's going to win in the end.
This is what a weird direction.
Yeah, I know, but it all comes back. That's what really my main thing is. Like, he knows what he's talking about when he says like these things about immigration, but he doesn't know what he's even really saying. Like he knows that he has these viewpoints in his mind, but he doesn't know why he does. And I think that's really the biggest. He doesn't know how to articulate
and defend them yet. Yeah. He doesn't know why he thinks the way he does.
But I mean, it's also, I think it's completely fair to be like, fuck that guy. I don't want anything to fucking do with him anymore. He's a piece of shit. I can totally see that viewpoint. I think that's probably where we might differ in opinion there, like me and you personally, in that, like, I could see that side of the argument completely, because I hadn't watched JonTron in a while anyway, so it's not like I'm going to be missing his content, because I hadn't been watching it lately anyway. I kind of fell off after he stopped really making them that often, but I don't really watch a lot of that content anyway anymore,
And you have a right to dislike the guy, of course, and you have a right to not watch his content and everything. What I'm saying is, I don't think it would have blown up as much like in the media, and it wouldn't have been such a big deal. It wouldn't have been made. This mountain would not have been made of the whole thing a few years back before, PC culture really started taking over a lot more. And like you said, before the election, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, before we get back into this loop again.
Yeah, we do have a lot of...
It is an hour, 20 minutes in. Yeah. We got to end the show.
All right. Well, I will wrap this up by... a lot of this you could probably end up cutting anyway, because I think if we were to really... Also, to not open up a whole other can of worms, but this is a problem amongst people like JonTron and PewDiePie and their arguments that they don't even try to defend what they did or what they said. They instead attack the media. And I think we really need to back away from that, especially when we have a president who does that on a regular basis. We need to... I'm not saying we need to completely trust the media. I'm not saying that there's people out there, like a website like Kotaku does have a very liberal bias and is very much like PC kind of thing, and I get that, but at the same time, there are people trying to just do their jobs. They don't control anything. They're not evil and trying to take him down from the outside. They're just trying to do their jobs. They're reporting on things that they feel are important to the gaming world. And if they feel that reporting about PewDiePie is the right thing to do, then that's their thing. Now, when it comes to the Wall Street Journal article that started the whole PewDiePie thing, there is a history of mainstream media. I'm talking about the real mainstream media. I'm talking Wall Street Journal, New York Times, CNN, like normie media that's focused on that stuff. When it talks about video games or any kind of pop culture that's outside of the complete mainstream, they get shit wrong all the fucking time.
Oh, absolutely.
They blow shit way out of proportion. They blew video game violence way out of proportion. They're going to blow PewDiePie's anti-Semitism out of proportion. So it's up to you to go find sources that understand video games and YouTube culture and report on it. So Kotaku understands video games and YouTube culture and stuff like that. So when they report on it, you could trust their reporting on the matter. And the person that wrote the article about it had to do a whole thing on Twitter where she was like, look, he can call us out, but he called us out before we even reported on his video. PewDiePie had a lot of super positive coverage on Kotaku, talking about how, like, hey, he might be the richest dude in the world, but he's a pretty okay dude. And they had tons of positive coverage on this guy. And they hadn't even reported about the video, but he calls him out on his video about the thing, even though they had never said anything about it. They weren't even going to report on it until after he calls them out. So they're like, okay, well, I guess this is an important enough news story for you, so let's talk about it,
Yeah, so, and it does. It in the end, it does fall to the consumer, the listener, the reader, to determine when something is completely just over biased to one side or the other. It is also your duty as the consumer to determine when you're reading something that is confirmation bias to your own views. Yeah. Which is a problem.
There's definitely a difference between reading something to be informed and reading something to be comforted in a way. Right. And I think a lot of it's both on the left and the right. Liberals just want to read shit that just makes them feel better about the world. Oh, well, guess what? Shit might be going downhill, but there's a black guy and he saved 5 kittens from a burning building. And then you have Republicans who want to read shit like, oh, the fucking liberals are at it again. Here's some 5 tweets from people that literally have no bearing on the actual opinion of anybody.
And Facebook and Google and all the social media platforms don't help it any because their metrics just throw confirmation bias at you. Right. I have to go out of my way to read articles from a liberal point of view a lot of the time. Yeah,
and it's hard for me to even read something from a conservative point of view because a lot of the main hardline conservative outlets out there, like, they just do everything in their power to throw in as many Republican buzzwords as they can, like shit that I completely disagree with right off the bat. So it's like, fuck, this is impossible to read when you're fucking calling every person with an opinion an SJW, and you're calling every form of criticism outrage and shit like that. Like, people can't criticize somebody anymore because it's automatically labeled as outrage. It's like the dumbest thing ever. Like, that was really my main issue with the backlash to the backlash of the JonTron thing was like, it's not outrage. Like, nobody's outraged. Like, nobody's calling for his head. Like, that's outrage is like, it's a reasonably proportioned level of criticism. And if you go looking for outrage, you're going to find outrage. There are people out there who are probably completely outraged and blowing this thing way out of proportion. But there's also people who have complete actual criticism that is worth listening to about it, you know?
Like the SOGOpod.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's going to have to be it for our show. I got to go to bed.
Yes.
Sorry about getting too political. Hope you still enjoyed the show. Don't forget to go to WW.
You can find me on Twitter at BetaCuck.
Speaking of Twitter, don't forget to go like us on Twitter at the SOGOpod, www.sogopod.com, and facebook.com/SOGOpod, where you find us. Message us anytime if you want to hang out, maybe even be on the show, depending on who you are. Share your views, talk to us, fucking send us dick pics, whatever you want to do. We want to hear what you have to say. Absolutely. If you got a show it. That's going to be it for the SOGOpod, everybody. I'm Kinder.
This is FNX.